Anti-Semitism on the rise across the globe. Jewish communities are facing increasing hatred in the form of vandalism, Holocaust denial, violent attacks, hate speech, and harmful stereotypes. Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen addressed the rising tide this week at a hearing for the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.
This epidemic has been on the rise, as we know, and it must be taken seriously. Anti-Semitism, acts of hate, they are growing at an alarming rate. Earlier this year, the State Department called the rise in anti-Semitism worse than it has been in decades. And its impacts go far beyond the Jewish community.
And the Democrat from Nevada added a warning from the State Department that, quote, wherever anti-Semitism has gone unchecked, the persecution of others has been present or not far behind.
And here with us now is Gary Bauer, the Commissioner of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USCIRF, an advocate for religious liberty around the world. Gary, thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you.
Well, first off, what is behind the growing threat to Jewish communities?
You know, this is an ancient evil, as most people know, and the threat comes from all sorts of places. It's on the radical right. It's on the radical left. It's unfortunately at times inside the church. Certainly radical Islam and the spread of radical Islam is a major factor. So because it comes from so many different places, there's, we believe, a responsibility for wherever it pops up, for the people in that movement, that part of American life or international life, needs to take the initiative to combat it.
And Gary, how are nations around the world responding to these threats?
You know, in some places around the world, anti-Semitism is state policy. National policy. Iran's been in the news a lot. We should remember that Iran and the Iranian Revolution in 1979, its reason for existence was to destroy the nation of Israel. And it's routine for mobs to march through the streets of Tehran, chanting death to the Jews, death to America, death to Israel. Countries of Europe say they're concerned about growing anti-Semitism. But the Commission U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has been monitoring this situation, and all too often we see Western European countries making excuses for it. And even here in the United States, there's been anti-Semitism in the halls of Congress. Most of us watched in horror when the House of Representatives didn't seem to be able to come up with a clear-cut denunciation of anti-Semitism by one of its members without throwing a bunch of things in it that had nothing to do with hatred of Jews.
Speaking of Congress, we know there was a hearing just yesterday on this. Is Congress doing enough?
This Congress has been relatively good on the issue, except for the incident I just referred to involving one particular Muslim member of Congress. But particularly in the United States Senate, there's a solid majority for fighting anti-Semitism. Members of Congress of both political parties have denounced the BDS movement, which is the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement of Israel, which has clearly as its inspiration anti-Semitism. So both members of parties have condemned it, but we couldn't get a consensus in Congress. And fortunately, we've got a president that is adamant against anti-Semitism, and he took the initiative then and issued an executive order basically penalizing universities that don't deal with the anti-Semitism on campus.
Gary, real quickly here, just under a minute left. Are measures like increasing security at synagogues and focusing on education to counter prejudice, are these type of programs really working?
Well, security at places of worship, I think in the world we live in today, and even in our own country, sadly, that's extremely important. That's a prudent thing to do. But the long-term problem does require educating young people. We have studies that show most people in Europe, young people in Europe, don't even know what the Holocaust was. So educating against hate, educating for freedom, these are important things that we can do.
All right, Gary Bauer with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.
Great to be with you.
Thank you for being with us.
Great to be.